Hey, so I'm Simon Green. I work in the film industry as a lead creature artist. And today I'm here to talk to you about finding inspiration in nature, certainly in the context of creature design, but kind of try to relate it to everyone. So no matter what creative industry you work in, and to be honest, throughout life in general. So yeah, I mean, throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work on a wide range of projects from like a number of different design studios, and so like this is primarily through working at visual effects houses like Disney's Industrial Light and Magic, for example, among others. So working as a creature artist in the film industry, basically, you could be working really early in a project, working on like initial designs and concepts, kind of like working out that director's initial vision. Other times you might be brought on later on in a project, kind of like looking at the final CG asset. And usually it's some kind of hybrid of both. Wasn't supposed to switch that yet, but never mind. So you might be working on like a creature, kind of like a totally imaginary creature that's never been seen before. You might be working on like trying to reinvent a realistic animal, or you could be like bringing back a creature from prehistoric times. The kind of running theme through it all is that you should be looking at nature as your primary source of inspiration. So, maybe you don't work in creature design. I'm sure most people here don't. But, so like, how can it benefit you personally in your own life and your own career? So, like, aside from the obvious, like, health benefits, like both physically and mentally, they say just spending 15 minutes outdoors in nature can, like, work wonders for your kind of, like, mental and physical health. For creatives and, like, creative designers, one of the best advantages of looking at nature is that like it's basically an unlimited source of both creativity and inspiration. You can't really look at like all the biodiversity and in the natural world and not feel inspired. And it's the kind of thing that like you can look so much and there's always more to learn. So one of the best things you can do in your life and your career is just like go outside and expose yourself to that. Although if you see this little blue guy in the bottom, don't pick him up, you might die. This is the nudibranch sea slug. It actually eats sea anemones, which have like a toxin inside them, which it's immune to, and it uses that same toxin against its predators. So if you see one, at the very least, don't try and eat it. So yeah, as creatives and designers, you're probably very, very familiar with the principles of design. So these are kind of like a bunch of rules that we have that kind of like, help us create realistic designs and like effective designs. And one of the first things you realize when you look around in nature is that, these things in nature are everywhere. They're not just in nature, they're actually from nature. This isn't something we've kind of created. This is something we just observed and tried to implement into our own art. And another reason, other than just like physical design, one of the greatest reason for getting inspiration in nature is for problem solving. So throughout so many industries throughout your life, you probably wouldn't realize, how many industries take so much inspiration from nature. I didn't even realize myself until I started researching for this exact talk, how much, nature is in things we see all around us all the time. So like the humpback whale has these tubercles across its fins, and it actually helps to reduce drag while it's swimming through the ocean. And we see that today through like propellers and wind turbines and all kinds of like examples. And the shark actually has these microscopic scales on its body, where it actually prevents from like bacteria colonizing it. We actually see a synthetic version of that today on like a lot of hospital equipment that you might have encountered yourselves. Basically, the main point I'm trying to get across here is that no matter what kind of like problem you have to solve, maybe it's design, maybe it's like physical, but like basically nature has probably already solved it at some point in history. And nature has the advantage. It's been around here for billions of years before we even existed. So if you kind of like stretched out all life on Earth across your arm, the point where human beings exist is literally the white on the end of your nail. Or if it was a book, it's basically the full stop on the last page of the book. Do you know what I mean? It's like we've literally just started existing. Regardless of this, we kind of see ourselves in this hierarchy, kind of like above nature. It's there for us to like exploit and take advantage of. And it's like, we should actually be looking up at nature for its like vast experience and being willing to learn from it. So, yeah, I mean, humans are a part of nature like every other animal. But, we went from like single-celled organisms to very simple organisms like Dickinsonia, like Pikaia here, the first animal to ever have a spinal cord, the ancestor of all animals with spinal cords, into like protofish like Hycoichthys, and into like jawless fish, amphibians, which we came out of the water, still laying the eggs in water, into reptiles. We're kind of like laying those hard eggshells on land. And various stages of mammals. First like marsupials, where Australia actually broke off at that point. So, that's why there's so many marsupials there, until, placental mammals. And as human beings, we're primates. So we went from essentially Purgatorius, which is very much like a tree shrew, into something that's like, like a lemur, into something like a tarsier, into something like an early monkey, like Egyptopithecus, into early apes, like Proconsul, into apes that first standing up in trees, like Ardipithecus ramidus. And then the first bipedal apes, like Australopithecus, and up until we have basically it splits off into Neanderthals, our close cousins, and humans today. I would love to go into all of those in detail, but today I don't have time. So I'm going to focus on a particularly interesting one. This is Dimetrodon. You might have recognized him from kind of like dinosaur books and dinosaur toys when you were a kid. He's actually not a dinosaur at all. This is a synapsid, which is a mammal-like reptile. So, this is when reptiles were just becoming mammals. And, so he's actually more closely related to us than he is to dinosaurs. So if you have a friend who tells you that Dimetrodon is his favorite dinosaur, you need to end that friendship immediately. You don't need that kind of toxicity in your life. And so, as soon as we became Homo sapiens, basically we've been telling stories. And as soon as we've been telling stories, from ancient mythology to modern-day cinema, a key element of that has been, creatures and monsters. Who doesn't love a good segue? So, 90% of early cave art is actually animals or animal-human hybrids. It was all about survival. They didn't have encyclopedias to tell them what a lion was. It was like, you just saw a flash of teeth and claws in the night, and a tribe member being dragged away. It was terrifying. They needed to communicate to each other what animals we should avoid, what animals taste great in a sandwich. It was all about survival. And as we developed, it was more about kind of explaining the world around us. Like, why is there lightning and thunder in the sky? Is it dragons? Why does the sun move across the sky? Of course, it's pushed across by a beetle god. And later on, it began to explain ourselves. Creatures and monsters began to explain our morality and how we feel about ourselves and our inner demons and things of that nature. Until you have today, our modern mythology, which is modern-day cinema. And just to focus in here on this Cyclops with the skull beside, many creature designs kind of came early on from things that they would find in the sand. They'd be like, what is this? You need an explanation. They would find, in ancient Greece, they would find prehistoric elephant skulls. They would be like, oh, wow, they thought that this big hole in the head was actually, where the trunk comes out. They thought this was like an eye socket for a creature, and this is how the Cyclops myth got kind of created. And same with dinosaur bones and dragons, and actually protoceratops and griffins. Yeah. So speaking of ancient Greek creatures, this is a chimera. Chimera is the name of this exact creature, but it's also kind of like an umbrella term for all creatures that are like a combination of different animals. And this is like Creature Design 101 on the first page of every creature design book you've ever seen. It's kind of like an example of what not to do. I mean, the chimera is an amazing creature in its own right, but Today we try to kind of like blend our inspirations from nature in such a way that it creates a unique animal. And I mean, for me, Tara Whitlatch and a lot of her books, she worked on a lot of Star Wars films in the 90s, the newer ones. But yeah, I mean, that's where I learned a lot of this stuff. And here's an example of like what's kind of like widely concepted as a very effective creature design, which is the xenomorph from the Alien franchise. And as unique as this creature is, and it definitely is, there's nothing you can point to on that creature that you can't find a foundation for in nature somewhere. Like even that secondary jaw that comes out, that you can see that in the moray eel and a ton more examples. And I'm not saying that Geiger, when he designed this creature, was consciously necessarily thinking of those things. It's more like, everything you see in your entire life goes into your visual memory, whether you're kind of like really consciously aware of it or not. And, we have a natural sense for like what works and what doesn't. And, kind of like generally, if you expose yourself to nature and the natural world, you kind of don't even expect the ways that it will kind of like influence your design and potentially influence you in ways that you never even realize. So yeah, before I go into like a quick like 3D demo, I'm just going to talk to you a few about like natural concepts that would go on. So yeah, you want to be thinking about like the kind of environment your creature works in, the kind of like for example, the polar bear. It's a pretty simple example, but it's got white fur. It works in like a Arctic environment. If that creature was in the jungle, it wouldn't really work. But the main point I'm trying to get across to you here is that everything on an animal, everything on a creature is there for a reason. If it didn't help with survival, nature will get rid of it because it's just a waste of energy. We've all seen bad design in our days. You might see a creature that has big spikes on its shoulder that kind of like, you just know instinctively if it turns its head, it's just going to stab itself in the eye, and it's not. Nature would never make something like that. And yeah, you want to be thinking about like survival and reproduction. That's kind of like at our base, our ancestral, even from single-celled organisms. That's kind of the driving force between all organisms. And diet. How does your creature eat? Is it a predator? Is it a pursuit predator that chases down its prey? Is it more like a spider or a crocodile where it's like an ambush predator where it waits? And all kind of other ways you could kind of like specialize in eating. Reproduction, of course, of course you have asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction, but does your creature have a life cycle? Is it a bit like a frog with a tadpole to a frog? Is it like a, caterpillar to a butterfly? And maybe it has like a peacock mating displays and things like that. Or, maybe it has mating rivalry and ways to battle against other competitors. And how does your creature breathe? I mean, it sounds so boring, but maybe you're talking about a creature from another planet. What gases does that planet have? How much could you explore that and, come up with unique ideas? Domestication, we use creatures and animals for many reasons. You might we have creatures that plow through fields and things of that nature, but dogs, even just dogs as pets. Every dog you've ever seen, so many breeds, we've made all of those in the past 10,000 years just by breeding European gray wolves. It's pretty impressive. And finally, of course, evolution. How did your creature evolve? What stages did it go through to get to the way it does, to survive in the environment it does? The way evolution works is every generation, DNA is replicated, and it's very easy to make mistakes in this process. So every mistake is either positive or negative, and this is basically natural selection. The negative ones die, the positive ones survive, and that's basically how we have the variety of the creatures that we have today. And yeah, so I'll go through a quick demo today about how I might go through a creature design. Whether you're working for a big Hollywood movie or one of your side personal projects, basically the kind of core that you're going to start with is your idea and your references. So yeah, this is a couple of my reference boards. I go a bit extreme here. If you wanted to show one to a director, probably simplify it down a bit, but basically, you have your idea and your references. It doesn't matter which comes first. You might have an idea, be looking for references to support that. you might be kind of like looking for references to support your idea initially. But yeah, basically, the whole point of what I'm trying to say is that you should be looking at nature. You shouldn't be looking at like other people's designs and things that have already been existing. It's fine to do that to some extent, but at the end of the day, all of these things are entering your brains, and this is how you get copycat designs. This is how you get things like, you've seen many things where like, oh, I've seen that many times before. The way you get completely unique design is going right to the source, which is nature. And then, yeah, your initial idea. So this is the Tarbodon, is what I call this creature with the big frills on its head. And then you can see this kind of like sketch below is like super simple, like not kind of great drawing. And the point of this is like you shouldn't be aiming to do great drawing. You shouldn't be worrying about that. It's like you're more like searching through this fog in your mind to kind of like bring this idea to life. And I feel like some of my best designs have been on a scrap piece of paper or like a napkin. I feel like it's like pretty true through most of design is like, with that kind of creative freedom, you can come up with unique ideas. And yeah, here I'm exploring this kind of idea of them finding these elephant skulls to influence the Cyclops. And so yeah, I tried to explore that idea of like maybe find like a mammoth skull or something and kind of like reinventing one of those mythological creatures. And like all design, I mean, I know a lot of people here don't work in the same thing I do, but like I think it's pretty similar. It's like you go through many, many different iterations, many different choices until you get to what you want. I think for this Cyclops, I did maybe 40 designs, and these are two of my favorites. Basically, sometimes you need to see something that kind of, you need to see something for you to realize if it works or it doesn't. And like with every iteration, you get closer and closer to your director's vision. And yeah, so I don't know if like 3D design is maybe super relevant to everyone, but for me personally, in my industry, like you're going to go into 3D at some point. And thankfully, we have thousands of years of like clay sculpting, marble sculpting, like stone sculpting. We have all these tried and tested techniques that we can kind of like bring into the digital age. And a guy who's like really kind of like influential in this stuff is a guy called Dneg, who's actually based in San Francisco. I did a course with him like years ago, and he has many courses available. So I would definitely look into that guy, incredible artist. So yeah, a great place to start is like the head of a creature. As humans, this is something we like really visually connect to. And it's a great place when you're designing to kind of like, if you get the head out of the way, it's like very kind of clear, you can kind of follow on with the rest of the object. And but the thing is, you need to go through stages. So this is like the primary forms. You need to be thinking about the big shapes, the silhouette, how it reads from a distance. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in creature design, I feel like maybe throughout design in general, is going into details too early. You need a strong foundation before you can put details on top of that. And in drawing, you need to kind of not press too hard and just go into big gestural shapes. Or even in something like writing, this is like your plot overview where you're planning everything out. You don't want to go into like individual sentences or words too early. You need a strong foundation to build everything else on top of. Then you go into your secondary forms, build it up a little bit more. Tertiary forms, until you have your details, which should really just be a cherry on top. As artists, we have such an instinct to go into these intricate details so early, but we need to, control ourselves to create a good product. And then, yeah, I mean, you see tons of different kind of like biological and nature influences I had here, but probably only 20% of those I actually looked at. Like you see the kind of like pit bull dog up at the top, the mouth is super similar. And the vampire bat at the bottom there, the nose is actually really similar. Neither of these things I actually looked at while I was designing, but I've seen those animals before, and like I think they're pretty fucking awesome animals. So, like I said earlier with the xenomorph, the more you expose yourself to nature and allow those things to enter your brain, they enter your visual memory, and they will come out in your designs in ways that you're not maybe even conscious of. And yeah, that's the final creature design. But maybe let's have a quick look at some of those biological concepts we looked at earlier. So yeah, I mean, like in a desert environment, tusks are a pretty prominent thing. You can easily, when food is scarce, you can dig up like roots and like maybe burrowing animals. And we have the babirusa here. I kind of may have told a bit of a lie earlier when I was saying that nature would never create something where spikes would go into the eye. In this case, it does. But it's actually apparently beneficial for the species as a total because it takes out those extremely old males and allows young males to come in and kind of like not let that gene pool stagnate. And to be honest, one of the main inspirations for this creature in general was like orangutans and these huge flanges they have on their faces. So, they have these huge flanges and they just like call into the jungle. And these almost act like an amplifier or a satellite. They're telling males, like, stay away from my territory. They're saying orangutan girls, like, you want to get a coffee? Or whatever orangutans, do. And yeah, these things on the ears, my kind of primary thought of those was like it's almost like a giant eardrum to kind of pick up those sounds through the desert. But also I kind of thought, they look a bit like fish gills. And like I kind of thought like if there's a sandstorm or an environment where there's like very low oxygen, they can absorb this oxygen maybe from the surface and help them. And this isn't just out of nowhere. Actually, like as humans, obviously we evolved from kind of like fish originally. If you look at a human embryo, you see these gill slits form, and they actually go up and become the bones of our inner ears. So it's very interesting. And of course, like I said before, the environment should be the driving force behind every creature. Like, why do they have the features they do to kind of survive in this environment? And yeah, to kind of finish off, I thought I'd go through, not everyone here is a creature designer, maybe no one is, but I thought I'd kind of like relate to a few kind of reasons that you have to go out in nature today that can help you in your career. So the first one's pretty obvious. This is kind of like just literally going outside. I've included like museums, botanical gardens, zoos, and this kind of thing. But it could be as simple as like, if you have a forest nearby, or like if you don't have that, maybe there's just a park. Literally a patch of grass might seem so small and insignificant to us. We might walk straight past it. But like, kind of change your perspective, think about it, shrink yourself down, like to an ant. That patch of grass could be a city or a rainforest, and you would literally be amazed by the kind of things you can discover just by changing the way that you're looking at things. And yeah, in user interface design, we see a lot of like bright, colorful, shiny buttons, and it's very easy to say, look, well, yeah, of course, a bright, shiny button is going to capture our attention, but that wouldn't work for every animal. Like for human beings, this is tapping into our kind of like hunter-gatherer instincts. I see a lot of people taking photos. I guess is quite relevant. But yeah, I mean, like basically, you're getting that same dopamine kick that we got in our past from just like picking some berries. Your body's telling you, great for looking after your family and your tribe. And even previous to that, like our early primate ancestors, they were mostly frugivores. So we're looking for like bright colored fruits in the trees. And this is actually a main reason why that we as primates have such great color vision compared to other mammals. And yeah, so there's a bunch of carpet designers that kind of like a bit tired of this whole like big carpet like lump thing you have to roll out with bunches of people with toxic glue. Like, how can we redesign carpets? They're really inspired by the kind of like leaves on the forest floor. They reinvented the carpet industry by like kind of like inventing this carpets and tiles where you just clip them together. And it's actually, I hadn't really noticed it before I researched for this show, but many corporate buildings you'll see, you'll actually notice, wow, they're actually using these cube carpets. And you can actually create patterns that you could never like kind of create before. And yeah, going back to creature design, like what kind of creatures like could inhabit this forest floor? There's so many inspirations in nature you could go through. There's literally like so many designs. And I mean, that fox in the bottom corner, I can barely see him. So you can think of so many interesting designs in the daylight that could kind of like disguise you from human beings. But also, just to turn it on its head, like maybe think about like what the forest doesn't just exist in daylight. exists at night. Like, what kind of creatures and animals could you design that would like crawl out of burrows in the dead of night and like, humans would never see? What kind of adaptations would they have? They have like big eyes, like a tarsia. Like big eyes are often used to make something cute, but it's like, does it really make sense? Like in a sunny environment, big eyes are going to kind of like get extremely damaged very easily, but in a nocturnal creature, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe like big ears, like a bat. They use echolocation to kind of like describe their environment, and their eyes actually get smaller because they're putting their influence into those different organs. And like a mole, for example, like they basically put all of their focus into sensors. If you've ever seen the star-nosed mole, it has like a bunch of tentacles and stuff on its nose, and it basically doesn't have any eyes at all. So how could you kind of use these different animal influences to influence your creature designs? And maybe for whatever reason you can't go outside, or you're very busy or whatever. Just having a window in your room where you can see nature apparently kind of like, is a great positive thing for your health and well-being. Take advantage of all these documentaries, books, and things that we have in the modern age. Maybe while you're working, stick something on the background. It's amazing the kind of things that even if you're not paying fully attention to them, I do it literally all the time, stick an animal documentary on the background. It's amazing what enters your mind without you even kind of like consciously realizing it. And yeah, birds, that's quite a prominent thing in a lot of documentaries. And even if you're in the middle of a city, it's probably one of the main animals you see. But like, don't think like just this is a bird. Think like, why does this bird look different from this bird? Why does it have the adaptations that it has? You see the California condor here. Why is it so different from the pelican on the other side? And yeah, if you've seen the Japanese bullet train, they actually completely redesigned this train around the beak of the kingfisher. When the kingfisher enters the water to hunt fish, it literally doesn't make a splash at all. And it completely solved the problem that this train was having when it was coming out of tunnels and causing a massive sonic boom for the residential areas. And it also made the train more productive, cheaper, and faster. So if you search ecological niches online, you're probably going to see the first thing you'll see is different birds with different beaks. It's like a pretty prominent example. Also Darwin, when he first kind of realized about natural selection and evolution, one of the first things that triggered that was finches on the Galapagos Islands, all the different beaks they'd gained to kind of go for different types of food. So we have all the creatures on the side for eating meat and scavenging, and then we have all the ones here on the side with these long, wide beaks for eating fish. Except for maybe the little one that's eating in the crocodile's mouth. But even the crocodile, it's got that long, wide mouth that's specialized in eating fish. And we see this throughout history. This is what we call convergent evolution, where we see the same kind of thing repeating over and over again through history, through animals who are completely unrelated. It's pretty incredible, really. And think about that scavenger beak or different types of beaks. If you're doing creature design, for instance, maybe dragons or whatever you kind of feel you're passionate about, they don't need to have a mouth for no reason. It's how does that mouth help them get food? How does that mouth help them maybe make a nest, or perhaps there's some kind of mating rivalry involved? And yeah, probably finally, some of the absolute best things you can do is create your own space for nature, your own little sanctuary to create for nature. So if you don't have a lot of space, that's fine. It could literally be a window ledge. One of the absolute best things you could do is a wildlife pond. If you have a lot of space, then that's fantastic. But even if not, literally a bucket with a few plants in it, you'll be amazed at the kind of animals that just show up and start kind of creating an ecosystem there. So ecosystems in nature is pretty incredible, really. It's every single thing that's wasted gets used by something else. And that's what we call a balanced ecosystem. So everything that dies gets consumed by something else. Everything decomposes. Everything's eaten by somewhere else. And it all kind of balances and works itself out. This is pretty different from kind of the way that we do things. We waste a lot. And if we could actually kind of be inspired by nature to kind of every single thing we waste, maybe it could be used for some other purpose. And imagine the world that we could live in if we could do that. And of course, in creature design, you want to think about like how each creature interacts with each other, maybe come up with food webs and ecosystems. And this is the kind of thing that would never be shown on screen. So like, you're watching a movie, or I've done like plenty of these for video games. You're not consciously as an audience being fed this stuff, but like just the fact that it's there, the fact that it's been thought of, it can actually be like really the difference between something that's believable and something that just, you have that instinctive sense like, oh yeah, that just doesn't make sense. And yeah, I'll go through a couple of examples here of like, how that might be implemented in like the video series or film world. Here was like the baby T-Rex that we created for Prehistoric Planet. You can quite prominently see like baby emus. If you ever look, like I recommend you all go and Google emu foot. It looks literally exactly how you'd imagine a dinosaur foot. And the more you kind of expose yourself to nature, probably the more you're going to realize as you're watching kind of parts of media, how these have influenced it. And yeah, you want to, like I said, you don't want to be like a chimera where it's like a lion's head, goat's head, tail. You want to see these things implemented subtly, and so many inspirations to the point that like you don't really recognize them. I mean, you recognize them, but like, it's a unique creative design in its own right. And then finally, I'm going to show you probably one of the most proudest projects I've worked on. You can actually do this yourselves. You don't need any fancy software. You could literally go out all yourselves and do this tomorrow. So yeah, all you need is an idea and a spade. So yeah, dug a bit of a hole, put in a bit of an underlay, which stops the primary liner getting pierced by like rocks and sticks. Add in your primary pond liner, throw in a bunch of like rocks and stuff to make it look visual, and add a bunch of caves for like animals to hide in. Add a few plants. And yeah, I actually haven't even finished this pond yet. Kind of been working on it subtly for the last few months. Kind of started filling up with rain, so I was like, better kind of hurry this up. But it's amazing. Like I haven't even finished it yet, and it's amazing the amount of animals that will literally just appear and start inhabiting it. Like you'll be literally amazed. I didn't think anything like this would happen, but it's literally full of animals already, and I haven't even finished it. So yeah, basically, I guess this is about the end. So if anyone has any questions or want to connect or anything like that, probably best to reach me on Instagram here, Art of Simon Green. And I hope maybe by the end of tonight, you'll kind of feel inspired to go out, look at nature, and kind of like reconnect with that natural world that we're actually evolved to connect with. We've built these cities and everything around us, and we're losing that connection with the natural world. And hopefully after today, you'll feel inspired to go out, reconnect with it, and let it inspire your designs. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much.